The abandoned mansion sat deep in the Georgian woods like a carcass left for the earth to swallow. The vines coiled around its pillars like veins, the windows stared blankly into the forest, and the air around it carried a silence too heavy for any living creature to trust. Locals claimed that even the birds refused to perch on its roof. Travelers who passed by quickened their pace, whispering prayers under their breath. The mansion had rotted for more than a century, but the evil inside it never fully died. It waited, and tonight, the door creaked open again. She stepped inside slowly, her flashlight trembling in her hand. Dust swirled around her like restless spirits disturbed from their long, bitter sleep. The temperature dropped sharply, and the smell hit her next: damp wood, old fire, and something else, something metallic, like the after scent of dried blood. She swallowed hard. Her grandmother had warned her never to come here. Some houses remember, she used to say. And this one remembers everything. But the woman ignored the warnings. She had come for answers, answers buried under a century of silence and fear. A page of an old newspaper had pushed her here. A yellowed clipping taped into the corner of her grandmother's old Bible. It spoke of a slave who vanished for 7 days in 1857, returned with a secret he never spoke aloud, and within the month, his master, one of the wealthiest men in Georgia, was found dead under circumstances so strange that even the local sheriff refused to describe them. The slave was never seen again. The newspapers stopped talking about it. Families moved away, and the mansion, his mansion, was left to rot. She needed to know the truth. As she stepped farther inside, her flashlight flickered. She slapped it, and the beam steadied, barely. Her eyes followed the hall. Faded portraits lined the corridor, their cracked faces staring at her with resentment, as if offended that a living thing dared disturb their territory. A floorboard groaned behind her. She spun. Nothing. Only the thick, breathless dark. The silence settled again, but it wasn't the silence of emptiness. It was a silence that listened. A silence that waited for her next step. She moved deeper. Room by room, the mansion revealed its wounds: broken furniture, claw marks on the walls, scorched patches that hinted at fire. She ran her hand across a long scratch in the wallpaper and felt the grooves, deep, violent, desperate. It didn't look like something an animal would make. Her breath hitched. The deeper she went, the stronger the pressure became, like invisible hands pushing against her chest, warning her to turn back. But she forced herself forward. She had to see the place where it happened. The place where the slave returned. The place where everything changed. The hallway ended at a heavy wooden door. She touched the handle, and the cold bit into her fingers. The door groaned open as if waking from a coffin. Inside was the master's study. The air was thick, unmoving, heavy with secrets buried but not dead. Books lay scattered in heaps, their pages warped by time. The fireplace was black with old soot, yet it felt warm, as if someone had used it recently. Her heart stumbled. She stepped forward, light sweeping the room. Then she saw it. On the floor, beneath a collapsed shelf, lay a leather-bound journal. The spine was torn, the pages curled, the ink soaked into them like dried veins. The master's journal. Her hands shook as she knelt and brushed away dust. A page fell open, brittle at the edges. The writing was frantic, the lines uneven, like a man writing while his hands trembled in terror. She read the first clear sentence. He returned on the 7th night. God help us all. Her skin prickled. A cold breeze swept through the room, though the windows were shut tight. The pages of the journal fluttered on their own, stopping on another entry, one written in thick, almost carved strokes of ink. He won't sleep. He just stands in the doorway watching me. His eyes, they're not the eyes of a man anymore. Her pulse raced. Another page flipped. Something followed him back. Something hungry. The room around her tightened. The shadows gathered in the corners, thickening like smoke. She whispered, "What happened here?" The last page turned violently, slapping against the back cover. There was only one sentence. A warning. A curse. A truth meant never to be found. If you are reading this, then it is already inside the house with you. The air froze. Her flashlight died. Something breathed behind her. Not human, not animal. Something that smelled like damp earth and old graves, something that made the floorboards shiver beneath her feet. She didn't turn around, couldn't, because the voice rose behind her, raspy, hollow, soaked in centuries of rot. 7 days, 7 nights, have you come to finish what he began? And the mansion, long silent, closed its doors. The breath behind her grew heavier, thick enough to press against the back of her neck. The air around her shifted, colder than the dead of winter, colder than anything that still belonged to the living. Her muscles locked, every instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs felt weighted with invisible chains. The voice came again, closer now, as if leaning right beside her ear. He came back changed. Will you? Her throat tightened. She forced herself to turn her head just enough to see the corner of the room, nothing but darkness, thick and alive, swirling like smoke that refused to rise. The mansion seemed to breathe with her. She swallowed and whispered, "Who's there?" The dark shifted. A shape stepped forward, not fully visible, only a silhouette, tall and thin, with shoulders hunched as though carrying the weight of centuries. She couldn't see its face. Only the suggestion of one. The outline of a jaw. A hollow where eyes should be. Its presence filled the room like a sickness. Her heartbeat pounded so violently she felt the vibration in her fingertips. She stumbled backward, her shin hitting the fallen bookshelf. Books slid and thumped against the floor. The sound echoed unnaturally loud. She grabbed the journal and scrambled to her feet. The shadow shape didn't move. It only watched, waiting. She forced out a breath. I came for answers. The room responded with a low groan. The walls creaked, the floorboards buckled ever so slightly, and something in the ceiling knocked, once, twice, like a warning from something trapped between the beams. The room whispered around her. Not words exactly, but impressions, fear, hunger, rage, sorrow. The residue of what the slave had brought back. She backed toward the door. And then, the shadow twitched, a subtle jerk of its head. A motion too quick to be human. She bolted. Her body rammed into the hallway as the door behind her slammed shut so hard the frame cracked. She sprinted blindly down the corridor, flashlight useless in her hand. But something else lit the way, faint glimmers of white, like ghostly fingerprints sliding along the walls. The mansion guided her, or hunted her. Her breath tore in and out of her chest as she reached the staircase. The wooden banister was slick with dust and something sticky. She didn't want to think what it might be. She darted down the steps 2 at a time. On the ground floor, she gasped for breath, pressing her back against the cracked plaster wall. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Rhythmic. Not from above. Not from behind. From the hallway in front of her. The same steps described in the master's journal. He just stands there at night, watching me breathe. Her skin crawled. A figure turned the corner. She froze. At first she thought it was a man, but the longer she stared, the less human it became. It was tall, much taller than a normal person. Its spine was bent backward as if dislocated, its limbs too long, its skin stretched thin and gray-green, like damp parchment. Its eyes. God. Its eyes glowed faint white, like lanterns buried under deep water. It took a step toward her, and the floor shook. Her voice trembled out of her, barely a whisper. What happened to you?" The creature lifted its head. Its jaw cracked open wider than any jaw should. A grinding, tearing sound filled the hallway as its throat convulsed. Then, from the ruined space where its voicebox once was, a sound scraped out. "See, then." Her stomach lurched. 7 days, 7 nights, 7 secrets. The creature reached a trembling hand toward her, its fingers crooked, nails broken and muddy, as if it had clawed its way out of a grave. She stumbled backward. "No, stay away." But the creature didn't attack. Instead, it pointed down the hall, toward the cellar door. She shook her head quickly. "No, I'm not going down there." The creature's head snapped sideways, a violent, unnatural movement that made her gag. Its glowing eyes dimmed, as if pleading. Again, it pointed. A guttural noise scraped from its throat, a sound filled with pain, warning, desperation. And then, the mansion responded. Every door in the hallway slammed shut. Every window rattled, every light died, only the cellar door remained open, its darkness pulsing like a heartbeat. She understood then. Whatever secret the slave brought back, whatever curse he returned with, whatever turned him into this, it began in the cellar. The creature took one step backward, its body convulsing as if forcing itself not to follow her, not to attack. Not yet. It rasped out one last word. Run. Then collapsed into the dark. Her legs shook. Her breath burned in her chest. But the cellar stairs waited. The mansion left her no choice. She stepped toward the open door. The darkness below seemed to inhale. And then she descended, one step at a time, into the place where the slave vanished. And where he was reborn into something that should never exist. The cellar steps groaned beneath her weight, each plank bowing as though the wood itself feared what waited below. The air grew colder with every descent, so cold her breath rose like smoke. Her fingers brushed the rough stone wall to steady herself, and it felt wet, as if something had been seeping through it for decades. Halfway down, her flashlight flickered back to life, though she hadn't touched it. A soft glow at first, then a trembling beam, then a crackle like electricity. She froze. Flashlights don't turn back on by themselves. Something wanted her to see. She reached the bottom, her pulse hammering. The cellar stretched before her, far larger than she expected. The ceiling was low, beams sagging, cobwebs thick as curtains. Rusted chains hung from hooks, swaying slightly as if nudged by an invisible breeze. She swallowed hard. Something had been kept down here. Something that didn't want to be forgotten. She stepped forward. Her foot struck something brittle. She looked down. Teeth. Old, yellowed human teeth scattered across the dirt like spilled beads. Her stomach lurched, but she forced herself onward. She needed to understand why the slave vanished for 7 days. Why he returned changed. Why his master died terrified. Why this mansion refused to stay silent. Her light fell on something in the corner, a wooden trunk, partially buried in dirt. Its lid was carved with deep gouges, as if scratched by fingernails. Fresh fingernails. Her breath hitched. She crouched and brushed away dust. The trunk's lock hung broken, snapped clean, not rusted, recent. She pushed the lid open. Inside lay a set of folded clothes, old-fashioned, stiff with age. A slave's shirt, torn in the back, stained with something dark that refused to fade even after a century. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the shirt. The cellar exhaled. A low groaning vibration traveled up through the dirt, through the beams, through her bones. The air thickened. Her ears rang. Behind her, footsteps, slow, barefoot, dragging across earth. She turned swiftly, flashlight trembling. No one there. She backed up, her spine pressing against the trunk. Footsteps again, closer. This time they circled her. Not visible, but heavy enough to dent the loose dirt around her shoes. She gasped. Something walked around her in a slow, deliberate circle. She whispered, "Show yourself." The footsteps stopped, and then, a handprint appeared on the concrete support pillar beside her. Not pressed onto dust, pressed into the stone, as if molten fingers had burned through it. Her pulse thundered. The air shifted behind her like a shadow rising. She turned, and a figure stood at the far end of the cellar, barely visible in her flickering light. It wasn't the creature from upstairs. This shape was different, straighter, calmer, still. Its body dark, like soot made human. Its head bowed, its arms hanging by its sides. But the horrifying part, it had no face, smooth skin, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a blank surface where humanity should have been. Yet she could feel its gaze. She didn't speak, couldn't. The faceless figure slowly raised its arm, pointing toward the far wall, where a narrow crack split the stone. Dark soil bulged from within it, as if the wall had been filled and refilled many times. She stepped toward it. The faceless figure didn't move, didn't breathe. As she got closer to the crack, she noticed something lodged inside. A piece of fabric. She tugged gently. It slipped free, releasing a puff of ancient dust. Her breath caught in her throat. It was a strip of clothing. Not from a slave, from a master. She recognized the material instantly. Fine, imported, far too expensive for anyone else in the mansion to own. Her flashlight quivered in her hand. The journal entries came rushing back. He returned on the 7th night. He just stands in the doorway watching me. His eyes are not the same. Something followed him back, she whispered. He didn't vanish, he was taken. The faceless figure twitched. The ground trembled, and the crack in the wall split open, stone breaking with a deafening crack. The earth pushed outward, vomiting dirt and rotted wood. And something else. A shape. Something curled. Something bound. Something buried alive, or buried dead. She stumbled backward as skeletal fingers emerged from the soil. Then a skull surfaced, jaw sagging open in a silent scream. The skeleton was wearing the same material she held in her hand. The master. She choked on her breath. What did he do to you? The seller answered. Not the skeleton, not the faceless figure, not even the creature upstairs. The mansion itself. A voice rose from the beams, from the dirt, from the stones. He followed the slave, into the dark, where he didn't belong. The faceless figure raised its hand again, pointing, not at the corpse, not at the wall, but at her, as if saying, now you know, and now it knows you know. The lights in the cellar went out. Something massive inhaled in the darkness. And she realized, she wasn't alone down here, not with the faceless figure, not with the skeleton, but with the thing the slave brought back. The thing that destroyed his master. The thing the mansion still fed. And it had just woken up. The rain had stopped, but the forest behind the plantation was still dripping, every leaf trembling as if trying to shake off something unnatural that clung to it. The slaves whispered that the woods themselves had changed since Elijah returned. Some said the trees leaned closer when he walked past. Others swore they heard footsteps behind them, soft, bare, deliberate, but when they turned, nothing was there except the sway of branches that should not have been moving. Elijah kept to himself after the confrontation with Master Hammond on the porch. He slept little, ate less, and avoided the quarters as though afraid his shadow might slip off his body and betray him. The older women noticed first that he walked differently now, slower, as if he was listening for something only he could hear. On the 4th night, around the time the moon climbed pale and thin above the treeline, Elijah slipped out again. He didn't think anyone saw him, but Mary, the midwife, was awake, grinding herbs. She watched him from the tiny window and felt a cold pinch in her stomach. She whispered a prayer because Elijah's footsteps weren't the quiet footsteps of a man sneaking out. They were the quiet footsteps of something following its own caller. Elijah's path led into the pine thicket, where no one went willingly. The elders claimed that during the 7 days Elijah vanished, something in those woods marked him, claimed him, and fed him truths not meant for mortals. The air around him thickened, carrying the metallic smell of rot and the sweetness of honeysuckle. A strange combination, one that didn't belong in this world. As he moved deeper, the forest grew warmer, humid, pulsing with a faint red shimmer. Fireflies hovered, but their glow didn't blink normally. Instead, their lights throbbed together, in long, steady beats, like a giant heart buried beneath the roots. Elijah whispered into the air, I'm here. And the woods answered. Branches curled downward like fingers. The light dimmed. Something stepped out. Not a creature, not a human, but a shape made of shadow, its edges bending wrong, as if stitched to the air by force rather than nature. Elijah faced it without fear. You showed me your truth, Elijah murmured. Now I need your strength. The shape leaned toward him, and though it had no mouth, Elijah felt its breath, cold, wet, ancient. It brushed against his skin like the touch of something long dead. Elijah's eyes rolled back for a moment, and when he opened them again, the whites were veined with dark crimson. The pact was growing. Meanwhile, back at the plantation, strange disturbances spread through the night. Doors slammed on their own. The horses refused to drink water. The overseers complained of hearing raspy breathing outside their windows. And Master Hammond, stubborn, cruel, unshakable Hammond, woke drenched in sweat after nightmares he couldn't explain. He kept dreaming of the woods. Dreaming of Elijah's eyes watching him from behind every tree. dreaming of 7 days repeating again and again, each one ending in screams he could never locate. That night, as Elijah returned from the forest, Mary stepped in his path. She held no lantern. She didn't dare. The moonlight alone revealed his face, pale, tense, and touched by something unholy. "Elijah," she whispered. "Child, what did you do out there?" He stared at her, but his expression held no recognition. Only tension, and fear. Not fear of Mary, fear for her. "You need to leave this place tonight," he said quietly. "The thing that followed me, it doesn't want the master anymore." Mary's voice trembled. "Then who does it want?" Elijah swallowed. "Everyone connected to him." The wind blew, carrying a low hum that made both of them shiver. Somewhere behind the trees, something moved, slow, dragging, patient. The pact had come to collect. The next evening began with an unnatural stillness. No crickets, no cicadas, no distant hoot from an owl. Even the wind seemed to have been stripped from the world. The plantation, usually alive with thousands of tiny noises, felt hollow, like a house holding its breath before a scream. Master Hammond rose from bed with a shudder he couldn't hide. The nightmares were getting worse. Last night, he dreamt of Elijah walking through the mansion halls, bare feet leaving dark streaks behind, streaks that spread like veins, cracking the wooden floorboards. Elijah whispered something in the dream, soft but sharp enough to pierce. 7 nights, 7 deaths. Hammond had jolted awake, swearing he heard breathing a few inches from his ear. He now walked through the mansion gripping a pistol, though his hands trembled badly. Outside, the quarters buzzed in fear. Mary had told 3 slaves to gather what little they had and run before sunset. But none dared to. The plantation was surrounded by swamps and woods that swallowed people without warning. Running meant trading one danger for another. But staying felt like waiting on death. Children cried without knowing why. Dogs whimpered, tails tucked tight. Even the overseers, usually loud, arrogant, and cruel, kept close together like frightened cattle. Only Elijah walked calmly. He moved like a man existing in 2 worlds at once, one foot on the ground, the other in a shadow they could not see. And wherever he passed, candles flickered. Wood popped. The air dipped colder. The slaves whispered, "He's marked. He ain't alone no more." And they were right. Elijah's shadow lagged behind him, stretching wider than a normal man's, pulsating faintly with a red glow. That night, Hammond ordered all overseers to his dining hall. They gathered with stiff backs and sweating brows, each clutching weapons they barely believed in. "We're taking the woods at dawn," Hammond said, voice shaking beneath forced authority. "Whatever Elijah brought back, animal, spirit, or demon, we hunt it down and burn it out." One overseer, Wilkes, swallowed. "Sir, what if it came here for us?" Hammond's jaw twitched. "Then we kill it quicker." But the room flickered. Every candle flared, tall, violent, before extinguishing in perfect unison. Darkness swallowed the hall. Breathing filled the space. Not human breathing. Wet, slow, relentless. Something scraped across the ceiling. Overseers fell to their knees, covering their ears as a low, vibrating growl seeped through the walls. Chair legs rattled. Glasses burst. One man screamed when a cold, invisible hand dragged down his back, tearing fabric, drawing blood. Hammond fired his pistol into the dark, but the sound didn't echo. The room absorbed it, like the walls were alive. When light finally returned, candles reigniting on their own, one overseer was missing. His chair still rocked. Nothing else. Back near the quarters, Mary and the elders huddled with Elijah. "Elijah," she whispered, clutching his arm, "you have to tell us what you brought back. Is it a demon, a spirit, a curse?" Elijah stared at the dirt, jaw clenched. "It's something older," he murmured. "It lives in those woods. It don't speak in words. It speaks in hunger." Mary's voice cracked. "Why did it follow you?" He looked up then, eyes rimmed with red, pupils trembling. "Because I asked it to." The elders gasped. "You fool," one whispered. "What did you promise it?" Elijah swallowed hard. His voice broke when he finally answered. A life for a life. A master's life. Mary asked with a trembling breath. Elijah shook his head slowly. No. He looked toward the mansion, where the candles still trembled from that unseen force. I promised it every life tied to the master's bloodline. Mary covered her mouth as the chilling truth set in. The creature wasn't here to kill Hammond. It was here to wipe out everything connected to him. His overseers, his kin, his household, his legacy, and anyone else who stood in the way. A scream tore through the night from the mansion. The missing overseer finally found. Or what was left of him. A thick fog rolled down from the woods after midnight, heavy, gray, and unnaturally wet, like it carried breath instead of moisture. It slithered across the fields, swallowed the barn, slipped between the cracks of the slave quarters, and finally reached the mansion, where it pooled at the steps like a living thing waiting to be invited inside. Only it didn't wait. The front doors shuttered, then opened, all by themselves. Inside, Master Hammond paced the foyer, pistol clutched so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Sweat slid down his temples. His lamp flickered as if the flame itself feared what was approaching. Then the fog swept in. Cold wrapped around him, squeezing his lungs until he felt every breath was borrowed. Who's there? Hammond whispered. The answer came from the staircase. A long, dragging thump. Then another. Something was coming down, slow, uneven, heavy, as though each step strained under the weight of something enormous or something broken. A hand appeared first, gray, fingers too long, nails black and curled. Then an arm, then a bent, twisted torso. Something that resembled the missing overseer but moved like the bones inside him were bending the wrong way. His eyes were wide, glassy, and glowing faintly red. Hammond stumbled backward. No, this ain't possible. But the voice that came from the overseer's ruined throat wasn't human anymore. A debt must be paid. Hammond fired. The bullet sank into flesh but made no difference. The overseer creature kept coming. Dash. Meanwhile, in the quarters, the slaves jolted awake as the ground trembled. The air turned sharp, metallic, tasting of blood. Babies cried, adults prayed, and Elijah stood outside, staring at the mansion as if he could see through its walls. Mary grabbed him. Child, it's happening, ain't it? It's taken another. Elijah didn't look away from the mansion. No, he whispered. That ain't taking. He swallowed hard. That's feeding. Dash. Inside, Hammond tried to run, but the fog thickened behind him, walls melting into shadow. The creature lunged, knocking him across the room, sending the pistol skittering across the floor. He crawled toward it, fingers trembling, but the creature stepped on his hand, bones cracking like dry twigs. Hammond screamed, but he never made it to the second scream. The creature bent low, jaw opening far wider than a human jaw should, splitting up the sides, showing rows of teeth it did not possess when alive. The fog pulsed, the lights flickered violently, and then, silence. Only the sound of chewing filled the mansion. The fog stopped moving. It throbbed, as if absorbing something. Like a heartbeat that wasn't human. Dash. By the time the creature retreated into the shadows, something else began happening, something worse. Cracks appeared along the walls of the mansion. Long, thin, jagged cracks. Blood, dark, syrup thick, began seeping out of them. Dripping, running, painting the floorboards. The mansion wasn't just haunted. It was becoming alive, and it was bleeding. Dash. Back at the quarters, Elijah suddenly staggered, clutching his chest. Mary caught him before he collapsed. Elijah, what's happening to you? He gasped for breath, eyes flickering with crimson streaks. It's inside the house now, he whispered. It's growing stronger. The more it feeds, the more it binds to me. Mary's face went white. If it binds to you, what happens? Elijah's answer chilled her to the bone. If it finishes the debt, I don't stay Elijah. His voice cracked. I become what it is. Thunder rolled through the sky, though no storm existed. The woods whispered in 1,000 voices. And somewhere inside the mansion, something growled, full and satisfied, ready for its next hunt. The screams from the mansion reached the quarters like distant echoes dragged across metal. Every man, woman, and child froze. Even the wind seemed to hide. Only the mansion groaned, an old, wooden monster coming alive with every death inside it. Elijah stood in the doorway of the quarters, eyes fixed on the towering shape of the plantation house. Red light flashed inside it, flickering through the windows like lightning trapped in the walls. Mary grabbed his wrist. "You can't go near it, Elijah. That thing wants your body. It wants to finish that bond." Elijah's voice trembled. "If I don't go, the house ain't stopping at the overseers. It'll come for all of you." Before Mary could answer, 5 overseers rushed past the quarters toward the mansion, armed with rifles, torches, and blind desperation. They didn't run out of bravery. They ran because they were next. Dash dash dash. When the overseers reached the mansion steps, the front door creaked open for them, a long, slow, mocking invitation. Blood leaked down the threshold like it had veins of its own. The torches flickered, but the men swallowed their fear and entered. The door slammed behind them. Hard. One shouted, "Who closed that?" Another muttered, "I ain't waitin' to see." Spread out. Find the master. But the house shifted. Literally shifted. The staircase twisted, growing longer, stretching like melted wax. The hallway to the left shrank, squeezing inward until it was no wider than a coffin. The wallpaper peeled itself off, forming faces, screaming, melting, whispering all at once. It wasn't just bleeding now. It was rearranging itself like a living maze made from bone and hatred. "Stay together," Wilkes, the head overseer, yelled. But the house did not allow it. The floorboards cracked like jaws. A gap opened beneath one man's feet, swallowing him whole. He dropped into darkness, screaming until the sound faded into something wet, something final. "Run," Wilkes shouted. The remaining 4 sprinted down the hall. But the hall moved with them. Doors slid along the walls. Windows vanished. Shadows crawled across the ceiling like spiders, reaching long fingers toward the men. One overseer fired wildly into the dark. The bullet hit nothing. A hand, gray, long, and dripping, extended from a shadow, grabbed his face, and yanked him into the wall. The wood swallowed him like mud, leaving only his muffled, choking scream inside the boards. A heartbeat thumped through the mansion, deep, heavy, ancient. Wilkes and the last 2 men stumbled into the dining hall. The same room where the first overseer had vanished. The long table was still set, except now blood pooled around each plate, dripping slowly, rhythmically, as if the table itself were bleeding. A shape sat at the head of the table. Master Hammond, or what was left. His chest cavity was open, emptied. His head slumped sideways, mouth twisted in horror. His eyes glowed faintly red, puppeted by something inside him. Wilkes gagged. "God! Dear Lord!" The master's jaw cracked open. Wider, wider, far wider than human bones should allow. A voice poured out of him. But it wasn't his voice. "The debt is not yet paid." The 2 overseers bolted, but the mansion moved faster. The chandelier dropped, swinging like a pendulum of knives. It caught one overseer across the back, cutting him in half. The other ran screaming through the doorway, only for the doorframe to snap shut like a wolf's jaws, crushing him instantly. Wilkes fell to his knees, shaking uncontrollably. "Please, please, I just followed orders, I was only." The master's corpse rose, limbs twitching, dragged by invisible strings. It pointed at Wilkes. The fog surged from the cracks in the walls, wrapping around him like cold rope. He screamed as it lifted him, squeezing, bending, breaking. "You cannot hide from what you helped build." The voice whispered through the dead master's mouth. And with a wet crack, Wilkes' body folded inward. The fog absorbed him like meat dropped into boiling tar. Dash dash dash. Outside, Elijah collapsed again, crying out as pain ripped through his chest. His shadow stretched unnaturally across the ground, shaking violently like it was alive. Mary held him. "What's happening?" Elijah's voice came out in a choke. "It killed almost all of 'em. And every time it feeds. It crawls deeper into me." He looked up at the mansion, its windows glowing red like a giant pair of eyes. Part of that thing is already inside me. A final scream tore from the mansion. Then silence. A silence so deep it felt like the world stopped breathing. When the front door slowly creaked open again, the fog slithered out, moving directly toward the quarters. The fog rolled across the yard like a living tide, thick, gray, and pulsing with a faint red glow that matched the windows of the mansion behind it. The quarters erupted into panic. Mothers grabbed their children. Men pushed toward the back doors. The elders whispered prayers so fast the words tangled. But the fog wasn't rushing. It moved with purpose. It was choosing. Elijah staggered forward, chest heaving, shadow trembling behind him like a wounded animal trying to break free. Mary grabbed him by the shoulders. Elijah, you can't go near that fog. It's coming for you. He shook his head, voice cracking. It ain't coming for me, Mary, not yet. The fog crept closer. Everyone inside the quarters felt the temperature drop, as if the fog were drinking the warmth from their bodies before it even touched them. Hannah, a young girl no older than 12, screamed as the fog reached the doorway. Her voice carried terror sharp enough to slice the night. Don't let it in. Her cry only made the fog surge faster. It touched the doorway, and stopped. Not like a wall blocked it. Like it was smelling, searching, tasting the fear inside. Elijah stepped between the fog and the door, jaw clenched, shivering violently. Take me, he whispered. I'm the one who made the pact. The fog recoiled slightly, and then pushed forward again, this time brushing Elijah's ankles, swirling around his legs, rising up his torso. His eyes rolled back for a moment, and Mary screamed as she saw the veins in his neck bulge black, pulsing like the roots of some monstrous plant climbing inside him. But then, the fog withdrew. It lifted its headless shape, drifting sideways, toward Hannah. The girl stumbled backward into her mother's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. The fog slid toward her like a hand reaching across a table. No, Elijah roared. He stepped into the fog's path again, but this time the fog didn't wrap around him. Instead, it lashed at him, hard, striking him like a whip made of ice and shadow. Elijah flew back several feet and crashed into the dirt. Mary ran to him. It's not listening to you anymore, Elijah. You brought it here, you opened the door, now it thinks it owns everyone. Elijah coughed, tasting blood. No, it ain't like that. He looked up at the fog, eyes burning red. It's collecting lives tied to the master's sins. It don't want innocence. But the fog didn't stop moving toward Hannah. It hovered in front of her, drifting like a curious predator. Her mother clutched her tight, whispering broken prayers. Then, slowly, the fog backed away. It drifted past Hannah, past her mother, past the entire line of terrified slaves huddled against the wall. It moved instead toward Thomas, the blacksmith, big, strong, and shaking like a child. Thomas dropped to his knees instantly. No, please, I ain't. Never touched the master, I ain't never. Elijah's eyes widened in horror. Thomas had worked the iron that forged the master's chains. Chains used on dozens of slaves. Chains used for decades. Chains soaked in screams and blood. The fog wrapped around him. Thomas didn't even fight. He cried, begging through gasps, "Forgive me, Lord, forgive me." The fog tightened. Bones cracked. His screams turned into wet, bubbling gurgles. Then, silence. When the fog pulled back, Thomas collapsed in a heap, limbs twisted like rope, face frozen in terror. The fog absorbed what left him, shadow drinking flesh, and drifted back toward the mansion. Elijah pushed himself up, shaking uncontrollably. It took him, because he forged the iron. It's counting every sin connected to Hammond, no matter how small. Mary whispered, "How many more does it want?" Elijah looked at his own hands, veins pulsing red. I don't know, but he felt it, a pull, a hunger, a voice echoing inside him, whispering with the rhythm of a heartbeat not his own. Finish the debt, finish the bloodline. Mary saw him trembling. Elijah, what's wrong with you? He stared at her with eyes that flickered between human and something else. It's not just killing through the fog anymore, Elijah whispered. It's starting to use me. And then, from deep inside the mansion, a sound thundered across the fields. A roar, a scream. A voice that wasn't human or beast. The creature was changing, and it was coming out. The roar shaking the plantation did not sound like it came from one throat, but from hundreds. Hundreds of voices crying, growling, begging, accusing. All tangled into one monstrous howl that tore through the night and froze every living soul where they stood. The fog paused, then drifted back toward the mansion, as if returning to its master. But Elijah fell to his knees, clutching his head. Mary leaned over him. Elijah, what's happening? His voice came out warped. Not entirely his. It's waking up. The real thing. What was sleeping under the woods? His shadow stretched across the ground like a spilled pool of ink, widening, splitting into tendrils that twitched like living worms. Mary stumbled backward. Lord have mercy, child, your shadow. I can't stop it, Elijah gasped. It's inside the mansion now. It's wearing the fog, and it's wearing what's left of the overseers. And soon, it'll wear me. The mansion doors exploded outward, wood flying into the yard as if blasted by a cannon. And then something stepped into the doorway. Not walking, sliding, like bones scraping under stretched skin. The creature stood taller than a man, yet thinner than a starving corpse. Its limbs were too long, bending wrong, joints bulging like knuckles under wet cloth. Its face, oh God, its face wasn't one face. It was many, overseer faces. Master Hammond's face. Faces half swallowed, half stretched, mouths frozen in silent screams. All fused together like wax melted into a single monstrous mask. Its chest glowed red, a dim heartbeat pulsing through the bones. A heartbeat Elijah felt inside his own ribs. Every pulse made him flinch in pain. The creature stepped out of the mansion, dragging fog behind it like a cloak of death. Children screamed, women ran, men froze, unable to move. The terror was too heavy, too old, too unnatural. But the creature didn't chase them. It turned its many faces toward Elijah, and smiled, not with lips, with all the mouths fused into it. Elijah's breath hitched, his legs buckled. Mary grabbed him. Don't let it take you. Fight it. Elijah shook violently, sweat pouring down his face. I can't. I made the pact. I asked for its help. I brought it here. The creature raised its arm. Long, sickly thin, and pointed at Elijah. The fog responded instantly, swirling thick around the creature's feet, rising up behind it like a tidal wave made of shadow and breath. Elijah screamed as his body jerked forward, dragged by invisible hooks planted in his soul. Mary held him desperately. No, you don't take him. He ain't got sin. The master did this. The creature's head tilted, as if studying her courage with amusement. Then it lowered its arm. The fog surged toward Mary. She shoved Elijah aside. It hit her full force. Mary was lifted into the air, limbs flailing as the fog wrapped around her like serpents. She screamed, not from pain, but from the cold, a cold that felt like sinking into a grave full of water. Elijah crawled toward her, tears blinding him. Mary, but the fog kept her suspended, admiring her. The creature stepped closer, its bone-thin fingers twisting. Mary's voice broke. Elijah, run. The creature froze. Its many eyes, some dead, some glowing, focused on Mary. Then it did something no one expected. It let her go. Mary dropped to the ground gasping, coughing violently, but alive. Elijah crawled to her and clutched her tightly. Why didn't it take you? Mary trembled. Because I ain't tied to Hammond's sins, I opposed him all my life. Elijah whispered, dread creeping through his bones. It left you alive, because you're not part of the debt. The creature's many faces turned back toward Elijah. Its chest throbbed. The heartbeat echoed inside his body, louder, harder, pulsing through his veins. Thump, 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 he screamed, collapsing again. Mary shouted, Elijah, listen to me. You are not that thing. You hear me. But as the creature glided forward, towering over him, shadows drinking the moonlight, Elijah's voice changed again. Layered, deep, inhuman. I was the one it chose. From the moment I entered its woods. Now the debt must be finished. The creature extended its hand. Elijah's shadow rose, splitting into talons. reaching upward, merging with the monster's own shadow. Their shadows touched, and fused. Elijah screamed as his body twisted unnaturally. Shoulders jerking, spine bending, eyes rolling white. Mary grabbed him desperately. Elijah, fight it, but he wasn't sure there was anything left to fight. Because as the creature leaned over him, Elijah saw the truth. It wasn't trying to kill him. It was trying to enter him. To finish the bond. To make Elijah the next vessel of its hunger. And when he felt its cold breath on his face, Elijah realized something horrifying. He wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of living. As the thing the creature wanted him to become. The creature hovered over Elijah like a shadow peeled from hell, its many faces staring down at him, mouths twitching with hunger, hatred, and something worse, recognition. Elijah wasn't just prey, he was the chosen vessel. Mary clung to his arm, refusing to let go, her fingers digging into his skin as if she could anchor his soul by force. Elijah, stay with me, look at me. But Elijah could barely see her. The world around him blurred, pulsing red, then black, then red again. His heartbeat merged with the creature's, beating in perfect synchronization. Thump, thump, thump. Every pulse dragged him deeper into darkness. Into the woods, into the 7 days, into the pact, into the ancient hunger he'd awakened. He felt the creature's voice slip into his mind, a whisper that sounded like wind moving through thousands of dead throats. Open yourself. Become what you begged for. Elijah screamed, his back arching as a violent surge of cold ripped through him. His shadow twisted, splitting, reshaping, growing claws, wings, fangs. Mary grabbed his face between her hands. Don't you dare leave me. You ain't this thing. You ain't. But Elijah's eyes rolled white, voice layered with the monster's. I asked it to kill the master. I asked it to take his legacy. Now it wants my legacy. The creature extended a single, bone-thin finger toward Elijah's chest. The fog rose behind it, forming a spiraling vortex. A throat of darkness ready to swallow Elijah whole. Slaves screamed. Some ran. Some prayed. Some fainted. Mary did neither. She stepped between Elijah and the creature. If you want him, she shouted, voice trembling but unbroken. You take me first. The creature froze. 100 faces stared at Mary. 100 mouths snarled silently. The fog surged around her, sniffing her soul again. Seeking guilt, seeking blood, seeking sin. But Mary had none tied to the master's crimes. She was clean, pure. The creature recoiled violently, as if burned by her defiance. Elijah gasped, a flicker of humanity returning to his eyes. Mary, move, please. No. Her voice was steel. You ain't dying tonight, and you ain't turning into that thing either. For the first time, the creature hesitated. Its head turned, slowly, unnaturally, as if listening to something distant. The fog trembled, the heartbeat stopped. Then, the creature stepped back. Elijah collapsed forward, coughing, blood splattering the dirt. Mary held him, shaking uncontrollably. It's letting you go. Elijah looked up, trembling in horror. No, it ain't letting me go. He pointed a shaking hand at the creature. It's realized something. The monster's many faces twisted into a grim smile. A cruel, knowing smile. Elijah's voice cracked. It doesn't need to take me to finish the debt. The creature raised both arms. Fog spiraling, darkness churning. Its shadow stretching across the entire plantation like a storm. And then, it turned around. Not toward Elijah, not toward the slaves. Toward the mansion, the cursed house, the blood-soaked walls, the legacy of Haman's sins. The creature plunged its clawed hands into the earth. The ground split open, cracking like a skull, vomiting fog, howling with trapped voices. Roots, bones, and shadow twisted up from the soil, wrapping around the mansion's foundation, pulling it downward. The house groaned, screamed, fought, but the creature dragged it deeper. And deeper, and deeper. Windows shattered, walls split, the roof caved inward as the mansion was swallowed whole by the earth. The souls trapped inside howled as they were pulled into the black chasm. Overseers, Hammond, the faces fused into the monster. All of them screaming, all of them sinking, until finally, the mansion was gone, buried, silenced. The creature stood at the edge of the pit, its body collapsing, crumbling, melting into fog. It turned its many faces toward Elijah one last time, and spoke in a voice made of 1,000 regrets. Debt paid. Then it dissolved into the wind. Gone forever. Morning light broke over the plantation. Slaves gathered in silence around the crater where the house once stood. Mary held Elijah upright as he swayed on weak legs. "You did it," she whispered. Elijah shook his head slowly. "No, I freed it. But the cost." He stared at the gaping pit. "The cost was every evil tied to this land." Mary squeezed his hand. "Then let it stay in the earth. Let it rot there." For the first time since he returned from the woods, Elijah breathed without pain. He looked at the sky. Clean, blue, untouched by fog. "The curse is finished," he said softly. Mary rested her head on his shoulder. "But our story ain't," she replied. Together, they turned away from the crater, walking toward a future without chains, shadows, or debts. Behind them, the wind whispered through the trees. Quiet, peaceful, finally still. The end.